All right, another round of applause for Abhitesh Singh for persistence. All right, so on Twitter, I always hear we're all gonna make it, and I really hope so. I genuinely do. But how are we gonna make it? I have no idea. But thankfully, this next speaker, the co-founder of Osmosis and Keplr, hopefully will let us know. Mr. Josh Lee.
All right, thanks, man. Morning, guys. My name is Josh Lee. I'm the co-founder of Osmosis and Keplr. And right now we're building Osmosis and Keplr. My life is sort of a leveraged bet on IBC, which meant the 2019-2020 bear market was very, very painful. And 2021 has been exceptionally awesome. We've been building Keplr for about a year and a half. I actually made the first IBC transfer transaction on the Cosmos Hub. So that will go down in history if we make it. But being the first is so not relevant today because, do I have the clicky things? Oh, it's over there. Cool. Being the first doesn't matter when today there's like millions and millions of IBC transactions going on live. And this is probably already outdated because, by next week, we're probably going to add another 6 or 7, and who knows where we're going to be at the end of the year, next year, and so on. But today I kind of wanted to talk about the lessons learned while I've been working around the wallet space, as well as building Osmosis, where we've been really focusing on interchain assets that revolve around IBC. And obviously the expectation was, all right, IBC is going to ship, everything's going to work, and we're all just going to be, very happy, everything's going to be great. But it turns out, launch of Osmosis was one of the greatest lessons in, trying to figure out how we should move forward as an ecosystem in improving IBC UX. So I believe it's time to take IBC UX seriously, just to take our ecosystem to the next level. When we launched IBC, we're like, hell yeah, everything's gonna be great. And that surprise was IBC UX. And we realized it's like, we've been building IBC, but we haven't really been thinking about what the UX of this would look like. So yeah, I should have brought my sunglasses on. It's game time. But let's talk about some of these things. I think up until now, a lot of the IBC development efforts have centered around the chain development. So, the IBC implementation in Go for the Cosmos SDK module. We're also Informal's leading the effort to get IBC for Rust, as well as multiple relayer clients and things like that. But I think right now where we are is the kind of client side. Like, how will the users be able to use IBC? The efforts there have been fairly minimal relative to kind of the on-chain side of things. And we really want to kind of increase that. So if anyone's interested, we'd love to talk about it, not just from a wallet perspective, but as the perspective of web app builders, chain developers, and if you're building applications that will be using IBC, it'd be awesome to have extra input there. But the cost of interchain sovereignty, we realize, is the UX sucks. We're building an interchain wallet, and sorry to be harsh, but MetaMask is awesome. Not just because everyone thinks it's like Keplr is great, but there's a lot of pain behind building Keplr because MetaMask, you can just point them all to one endpoint, and you can when you deploy a new application on Ethereum, you don't have to set up a separate endpoint, set up everything completely separate from the previous one, right? Like everything just lives on a single chain. It's great. Obviously, there are trade-offs with scalability and a lot of issues there. But if as a wallet perspective, you can just support one chain and you're good to go. That's not the case for the Interchain wallet and the Interchain ecosystem, where we're having to run 40 nodes across all these different chains. But more specifically on the IBC stuff, I think I kind of broke it down to these 4 points that I think we've seen a lot of issues. And yeah, I think we'd love to see more discussions around this and how to move this forward. And I think we have some ideas, and those are definitely not the definitive answer to all of that. But I think it's kind of a great starting point to start a discussion around that. So IBC token non-fungibility. And just as a preface, I personally run some of the customer like support channels for Keplr, and I think we're like the largest wallet in crypto. We have about 160K users that actually has like a live chat, and I should say live chat because it tends to take a little bit of time. So sorry guys if I reply to you guys a little late sometimes, but it's a lot. But one of the issues we've seen popping up a lot is this issue around IBC token like non-fungibility. So let's say you have Osmosis and the Cosmos Hub, and these are actual the channel pairs for these. So there's the source chain and the destination channel, and there's these whole notion of like channels, right? And let's say I transfer an Osmo token from Osmosis to the Cosmos Hub. Not sure why you want to do that, but sure. So it's there. But there's multiple channels that exist between the IBC connections. And channel 63 and channel 215 is another channel that exists, and I'm able to actually move my tokens back to Osmosis using a different channel than the one that is paired, that I sent over with initially. But what this means is when you get that Osmo back, you're going to get an Osmo that's not the native Osmo. And this has confused users a lot, right? So this is like one of the greatest challenges that we're trying to figure out. We realized, it's like when IBC first launched, we were too excited. So it's like, oh my God, I can't wait until people try out IBC. So we put that IBC transfer tab like right on the home menu. Surprise, surprise, on the next release, we're going to hide that a little bit because we realize people are sending tokens to all these weird channels. And man, they say it feels like, oh, great, thank you. Sounds weird. It's like, sounds very different. So I'm kind of getting used to this. But yeah, and like troubleshooting this feels crazy because you have to hop across like 7 different chains trying to track these transactions and, try to tell users like, hey, you have to send it from here to here to here to here. And for the average user, that's just not like the UX that you want to go for. The next part is, I think, the relayers. And right now we have all these chains, and I don't know how many lines we have, but essentially every line is an active IBC connection between the chains. And that means for that to work, there has to be relayers running it. And I really believe that today, like the relayer team, in terms of operators and the developers of relayers, are kind of like the hidden, like unsung heroes of the Interchain right now, because there's so many of them who are, who may not be super famous, but behind the scenes, it's like you've had issues where it's like, oh, I sent atoms from the hub to Osmosis and it's not getting there, or maybe I sent my atoms out of Osmosis and it's not getting there. And the people that are solving that are all the relayers who are kind of looking into these channels, making sure all the packets are relayed. And yeah, I feel like Osmosis has just been one of the like greatest things to move forward, like relayer development, relayer operations, ability. And sorry, sometimes I think we have this like test and prod mentality where like maybe the relayers weren't ready back then, but I mean a lot of them are getting really good at this. And yeah, and it's like the thing with relayers in the interchain world is like there's so many things that could go wrong. And it's not like, it's like just the relayer being wrong. It's like the chain, you're dealing with multiple chains, and one of it having issues can result in just the relayer breaking. Or maybe it is your server that's breaking, or maybe it's some fee issue. Maybe it's just like there's a million things that could go wrong that does go wrong. And I just want to say, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity in the relayer space to kind of improve the IBC UX. We have seen a lot more validators step up to the role as a relayer. But obviously, one of the things that I think we're beginning to see is with the emergence of the interchain, interchain infrastructure is becoming highly in demand, because to run a relayer, you need endpoints. And unlike a single chain where you just have Infura providing all of that, all of the endpoints for the entire ecosystem, you need to have multiple endpoints set up on different chains, right? And if you're a validator that's running a validator on all these chains, maybe that's not an issue. But let's say I'm just someone who's trying to run a relayer just because I want to try running a relayer. The prerequisite of that is I need an endpoint. And when you don't have that, that means you have to set up a whole set of nodes, or you have to get that from someone. And I'm not saying the Infura system of like, all of Ethereum just depends on Infura is great, but I would love to see Cosmos kind of step up a little bit more of having public infrastructure available so that many more people can be part of this relaying operations as well as just building, and I think that's one of the steps that we can go there. We've been enforcing this thing called chain registry. So when a new token is trying to get on Osmosis, there's a set of requirements that they have to meet for before they're actually get on the front end and it's tradable. And one of the things that we do is like, hey, we have this thing called the chain registry on the Cosmos Hub repo, and here you need to make sure you give all the chain information on like the peers, the endpoints, the parameters, chain ID, and things like that, just so that we do have a kind of semi-centralized, semi-decentralized record of all of your chain existing, and if someone wants to join it, work on it, they should be able to. And another thing I do want to highlight is Jack from Strangelove have been putting together an effort for a relayer DAO, and I believe this is going to be we're going to try to push for one of the largest funding efforts by the community pool, where the community pool basically allocates their community pool funding for the relayer DAO, and it'll be an interchain effort, try to raise something close to $10 million so that we can fund the development of relayer clients, which right now we have multiple already, as well as ensuring that because there is no direct incentives to run a relayer right now, that these relayers will be able to sustain themselves for the time being until we have a more elegant and sustainable mechanism of operating a relayer. And from the wallet perspective, Thorchain brought this up where like IBC is not going to make it because the protocol doesn't enforce the relaying of IBC packets. But I think that's like the beauty of IBC, right? IBC is like so permissionless, and it's like if you really wanted to, you can build a relay, enforcing the relayer from the protocol level, but you don't have to. And I just think that, surprisingly enough, relaying sounds like a lot of complicated work, but if us from the wallet perspective allowed users to just kind of self-relay their own packets, that actually reduces a lot of the overhead that's currently on the relayer operators to just the end user, and you can do that yourself. And for us, I think the TypeScript relayer is a great option for us to kind of provide that. We don't have that ready right now, hoping to do that in the near future. But one of the biggest issue is we're not entirely sure how this interchain fee thing is going to work. So at least for Osmosis, we're trying to consider this option where you can pay your relaying fees you can pay your transaction fees in a different currency. And since we actually already have an AMM Dex, you should be able to find maybe an average price, and you'll be able to just kind of automatically convert that into Osmo to pay for the transaction fee, because right now you have to pay the transaction fee in the native currency of, you don't have to, but that's kind of the convention right now, and it's just not great UX. And another thing that I really want to move forward from the Cosmos perspective is the address derivation pass. And there's been a lot of discussions about this. Right now there's multiple standards on how do you derive a Cosmos address from the mnemonic, right? And certain chains have been using the 118 coin type, which is the same as Cosmos Hub. And then there are also others who kind of choose their own coin type. I'd like to kind of push that we should all standardize around the 118 coin type, because I think one of the biggest things that people have been saying about, oh, we should have different coin type for every chain is the privacy issues. Like, oh, if you know this person's address here, then you can know this person's address on another chain. But I think that's actually kind of a good thing, right? Like, it's not like if I hold a USDC and, I don't know, like a BAT token, they have two different addresses. They have the same address. And I think that's a feature and not a bug. I think privacy should be an opt-in feature. That's very easy to do. But I think the UX gains that you get when you kind of standardize around the same address derivation and only changing the address prefix, such as Cosmos 1, Osmo 1, et cetera, would really help us kind of move forward in kind of bringing interchain composability together. As well as, it's just a lot easier to airdrop to people. So like, if I want to airdrop to Osmo holders, I can just derive their addresses on a different chain without, whereas, if you have different derivation paths, that would be entirely impossible as far as I know. So, and who doesn't like airdrops, right? So I did a poll, I think 3 days ago, and I was like, right now we have multiple ledger apps for certain chains, and overwhelmingly, it seems like everyone wants to just use the Cosmos app. And I think that's really important because we want to lower the barrier to entry for good security, right? I mean, one of the hardest things that I see when I try to support users is like, oh, I got scammed. And a lot of these, scams, phishing scams, tend to be easily avoidable if the user was using a hardware wallet. And the cheapest hardware wallet right now can only fit about 3 ledger apps, and we're not going to tell users, it's like, hey, welcome to the multi-chain. We have 100 chains and 100 ledger apps. So if you'd like to transfer from here to here, and you don't have that installed, you have to delete this one, install this one. Oh, you're done with that? Let's uninstall that, install this. And it's not the UX that we want. We want to kind of center around one Cosmos app that's accessible to all Cosmos chains. And I understand, perhaps, I know some Ledger guys are here, but wasn't sure if the business plan of like Ledger was to kind of, you sell the Ledger X that has more apps. So, that's why you kind of limit that. But, we want to lower the barrier to entry. And I'm just kidding. I think the Ledger guys were actually fantastic on some of these ideas and trying to listen to this. So I'd love to see, if you're starting a new project, please use the 118 Cosmos derivation path. We will love it. And maybe Keplr will be able to support you better if that's the case. And I think last thing is interchain composability, because all of these are completely separate chains. You require separate transactions just to do something that's very simple on a single chain UX. So let's say I like to buy region on Osmosis and transfer it over IBC, and then stake it to Validate or Bob. Now, that would take 3 transactions, whereas if it was just some random smart contract chain, you could abstract it as a sequence of transactions, where here, you have to kind of do it one at a time. And I think we have some ideas on how to kind of move this forward, because when you have a sovereign application-specific chain, trying to kind of link a lot of these transactions together tend to be very not ideal from the user's perspective. And I think the first thing is the interchain accounts. What's mind-blowing is we began talking about interchain accounts, I think around 2019, 2020. I even wrote a blog post about it. Back then, no one really cared. And then, here talking to people, it seems like everyone's really hyped for interchain accounts. And I'm like, finally, it's like everyone's getting hyped about it. But essentially, what it does, you can codify the account. Like, let's say you just have a robot that, that you tell that the robot would own the account, and basically just tell the robot to say, just do what this code tells you to do, rather than that account always being owned by a person. And what this allows is, you can have a chain that owns an account on all the other chains that also have interchain accounts, and you can kind of automate multiple actions without having the user to approve every single one of them. And this would allow things like, if I'd like to do all of these, I just have to interact with one chain, do one transaction that tells the sequence of events, and the chain would just interact with all the other chains over interchain accounts to handle all of that just through one transaction. And then another thing that we're working on from the Osmosis side is Bec32 IBC. And right now, we have all these prefixes on Cosmos addresses, like Cosmos, Osmo, region, Akash, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, it's there to let you know that it's an Akash address. It lets you know what it's a Cosmos address. But at least on Keplr, if you try to send tokens on the hub to an Akash address, we'll just tell you wrong address. So we're like, how can we make that a little bit more useful, right? And this is something that Sunny's been pushing on a lot with IBC UX. And what we're trying to do is say, I want to transfer from Osmosis to an address called Akash1. And if we have this, it'll just automatically know that, oh, that address is designated to Akash, and I will just send this token to this address there without having the user know, oh, it's like, how do I do IBC? What channel do I have to send it on? What if we just have a lot of these registry type things just on chain and let the chain handle all these routing things? And this would allow, abstract the need for users to know things about IBC channels, a lot of the concept around that, and let just chain handle all that. And that would be so much easier than where IBC UX is right now. And lastly, this is also kind of Sunny's thing that he's working on. I know Sunny's doing a lot. But how can we chain different transactions together? It's like, let's say, we'd like to take the result of the first transaction and feed that into the second transaction. And right now, there's no good way to do that unless you separate that out into 2 transactions that you have to approve. And I think this would be a massive increase in terms of interchain composability, which we're lacking right now, to move the space forward. Yeah, so I'm working on Osmosis and Keplr. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer it. And please wait for the mic. I was, someone told me it's like, no one can hear the questions, so I need to wait for the mic. All right. Oh, there we go.
Hello, thank you for the great talk. Actually, I'm also a privacy researcher next to blockchain and stuff. So what I'm asking is, do you see any major conflicts that we can't really achieve good privacy, but also have a good UX and hide the complexity from the user? So.
Yeah. So I think the way we approach that is we make privacy very easily accessible, rather than and I don't think the separating out the address derivation, if that's kind of what you're mentioning, is a good way to achieve that privacy. I think like secrets enabling IBC very soon, and I think trying to make secret network accessible over IBC is a much better UX of providing privacy to users than this whole address derivation path that by default you can't know what the addresses are across different chains. So I'm not sure if that kind of answers your question.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Like when looking forward to get involved.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions? I think I'm out of time, so sorry. I can't see because there's the lights. Oh, cool.
Hey, yeah. So I also have a question, kind of branching off of the point that you made about the derivation paths. In that case, it makes a lot of sense for everybody to just standardize on the same thing because there's not a kind of really fundamental difference. What are your thoughts on how to have interoperability where you're doing IBC not just between different instantiations of the Cosmos SDK, but between different chains that maybe have much more different underlying models for some kind of fundamental reason?
Yeah, that's a great question because we don't want to entirely give up the notion of sovereignty in Cosmos just so that we're interoperating very easily. So I agree. And I think this is a decision that each project/chain has to make when they launch, right? I think there are benefits that you get when you opt into some type of a standard that everyone else follows. But if you have a good reason not to, that's absolutely within your right. But I think the issue right now is that these trade-offs aren't very well presented to the people. And when they choose different derivation paths and different standards and create their own path, maybe a lot of times, I don't know if it's out of a good reason or it's just because they just haven't fully thought about the implications of their decisions. So I think standardization allows more easier interoperability and allows the network effect of IBC to grow. But absolutely, IBC should also cater to those who want to be completely sovereign and have their own standards and still be able to interoperate within the entire ecosystem. Awesome. Well, thank you guys all, and happy Cosmoverse. I'll be around.